Hello, everybody. My name is Shae Sterrett, and welcome to day 3 of Start Strong 2021. And I'm so excited to introduce a friend of mine, Sharon Laflamme, who owns Creating Serenity. She's a somatic experience practitioner, and today she's going to be giving us an introduction to her work in the world of somatic therapy. So she has a practice here in New Hampshire, but very similar to myself, she can work with people maybe from anywhere. So I'm very excited to introduce her. I want to remind people, if you are on the Zoom call, that this is being recorded. So it could very well show up on Sharon's website, my website, YouTube, podcasts. So for any reason you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your audio and your video. And then I will spotlight Sharon so she can share her work with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me and putting this summit together. It is amazing. And thank you all. It's wonderful to see your faces. I didn't originally know if we were going to have participation, and I love that idea. So feel free to ask questions. And what I really love to do today is help you understand, and maybe with new awareness, your amazing body, because it is in a surveillance system beyond any others. It is always keeping you safe and protected. And you are an electromagnetic piece of art. And I'm hoping to give you a real basic understanding of some of the somatic work, but really what underlies your nervous system and what it can tell us. And one of the things is, I know this is upside down, but this book I read 20-something years ago, The Gift of Fear, Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence. Basically, this book explains that every woman that was assaulted and this man was investigating, every woman knew in some part of her body that this was not safe, that I am not safe. And instead of listening to the body, which every animal on the planet knows, when I feel fear, I fly, I run, I get the heck out of town. But no, we have this wonderful cognitive evolved brain, so we can start thinking our way out of stuff. So anyways, we decide to listen to these people and don't want to hurt their feelings. And anyways, The Gift of Fear. The also thing that I was thinking about, and I've said, is your child might be going to school, or your grandchild, and they're saying, I don't want to go to school. I got a stomach ache. I'm going to throw up. And their body is telling them interoceptively, I'm not safe. And this is your surveillance system. And we're going to talk about all this. And I'm not safe. And those are some of the signals that we often choose to ignore. And we don't really recognize and honor a lot of stuff. And so today, I'd really love to get us to honor, recognize, and fall in love with our body in a different way, and actually see it perceptively in a different way. So interoception, I was just talking about, is part of your body's ability to like walk in a room and know, how is this? Because your body is full of organs, and those organs and all electric, and your heart has 100,000 times more electrical neural capacity than your brain. But all these organs come up to the brain through the vagus nerve, and there's 80% more that come up to inform the brain what's going on. Then there is only 20% that go down into the brain to the organs to say, oh, I need to flex my muscle. I need to digest the food. I'm going to let you feel it. But most of that is all about your body informing you into the brain about how you're feeling. And that's your surveillance system. So I'm going to invite you to start with the first activity. And I'm also going to invite you to take your audio off if you want or not, because that offers a bit of safety too. But so whenever we go anywhere into, especially a new environment, we have a process that's called orienting. And that is your magnificent interoceptive capacities letting you know if you're safe. So we're going to just do a little orienting exercise, which I have a bunch of exercises for you to participate in today. So just going to invite you, maybe shut your audio off so you can be really consciously aware of what your environment is. So I'm just going to invite you to notice, first of all, that you're sitting in your chair. And maybe you've landed and maybe you're still doing whatever activity was happening before. But then I'm going to invite you to look at and take in your surroundings really slowly. And just notice with compassionate awareness and like new open mind, looking for color and feeling temperature, looking and feeling for texture, noticing how you feel if you find anything that feels pleasant and nice or neutral, and just really investigating with curiosity about your surrounding. And then I'm going to invite you to look over your right shoulder, nice and slow, but when you get as far as you can go, start to again with curiosity, look around, bring your eyes up and down, smell with your nose, listen with your ears, with your environment. What are you noticing and what are you hearing? What do you see for color, texture? Is there things that make you feel good inside? And just being curious, because we're never judging, we're just opening up awareness. And then we're going to just bring our gaze over to the other shoulder, which is another whole new environment, which we don't usually see. New eyes, taking a look over the shoulders. Again, looking for color, smell. What are you hearing? What are you noticing? What feels good to you in this environment? And maybe what isn't feeling good? What are you noticing for temperature? And I'm going to invite you to come back and I'm going to ask you to do something that we don't often do, although I bet in this summit you have been. Check in with yourself. So I'm going to ask you to take one of your hands and put it on your heart. And then I'm going to ask you to take one of your hands and place it on your belly. And again, close your eyes if that feels okay. And notice with awareness where your heart rate is and where your breathing rate is. So we're just checking in with where we're at. So this is my body's telling me and informing me how I'm really feeling right now with the rate of my heart rate, with the breath. You can kind of feel your tension. And just check in with how it feels to be in your body right now, what kind of tension, temperature, how much weight is in your chair, and how much you have arrived here. And then I'm going to invite you to just imagine the person that you feel the most love for, that has been your greatest cheerleader, is taking their hand, and it could be a pet or a spiritual leader, but they're taking their hand and they're placing it right on top of your hand on your heart. And they're being right there with you in this moment. And notice if you notice any changes happening when you have that thought and possibly that experience. And then I'm going to ask you and invite you to slowly open your eyes and let the light come back. And notice if anything changed. And maybe it didn't. And maybe it did. But again, we're just looking to see, what is my body telling me? So one of the things I'd like to go over is what trauma is and what trauma isn't, because I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner and I help people transform the pain of trauma into peace. But people think trauma is an event, and it's not. Because I can go to my family and be really traumatized, and you might go to your family and be in total self-regulation, encapsulated in love and and joy. So it's not about the event, although oftentimes some events cause trauma, but it's usually our nervous system, which is the brain, the spinal cord, all your interoceptive capacities, and your ability to have resilience and capacity. And so when it's too loud, it's too much, you've been violated, or you've been around violence, or there's just something that makes it too much for the nervous system, because the nervous system gets overwhelmed. And when we're really young, it gets overwhelmed or easy. We'll talk about that later. But we think about the nervous system as like an electrical system. You are an electromagnetic being. Electricity flows through your neurons. And so think about the sparks. Like right now, hopefully, we're at a real low, maybe just not even sparking. Hopefully, we're in parasympathetic. But sparking, the more activity, the more excitement, the sparks and sparks, and there might even be dynamite. And sometimes that's too much for a nervous system, and it can actually shut you down in a freeze state, knock you right out. But sometimes it's just too much, and it's trauma. So your brain is always, always, from the day you're born, competing with two different things. It's competing for survival, and it's competing for, are you a safe person for me to be around? Because I need somebody to attach to. So your nervous system's looking for that. And it's also looking for, are you an unsafe person? And do I need to get away from you? So throughout our entire life, without us even knowing it, we don't know we're orienting, and we don't know that we're picking up on, is this a safe person? Is this an unsafe person? Am I safe? And so what I want the relationship to be is, let's embrace our bodies and know when we're safe and know when we're not. So if you don't know what activity is, you can take a deep breath in and hold your breath as long as you can. And that will start to send your nervous system into activity. You can also think about something scary or something that you've had that's been a stressor. And that also will send your nervous system, because a threat can be real or imagined. It's merely a thought, which we all know we can create our own environment with our thoughts. So if you've had a certain experience of activity, and I'm just going to show you this little guy, and that could be activating, especially if you imagined you saw this injury happening. That could be activating. And there's certain levels of activation. So there's also the warm and fuzzy aspects. And that is the opposite of activation. And this might bring a settling, a calming, enjoyable. And if you notice that in your body, that's a really good thing. So let's talk about activation and your nervous system. And I have these wonderful, oh my goodness, I didn't write it backwards. So I'll talk to you about.
No, it's fine, Sharon, we can see it the right way.
Oh, you can?
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So autonomic nervous system. So we have the central nervous system and we have the autonomic nervous system. That means we basically don't override it unless it's our breathing, we can. But it happens automatically. You know, you don't tell your heart to beat every time. You don't tell your food to digest. So that's why we need to really be in touch with our nervous system, because a lot of it happens automatically. And so we need to know what's happening. So we have the sympathetic drive, which is we start to feel activity. We start to feel the electrical thing. It usually happens with an emotion. We also have parasympathetic, which is down here, and we're going to call that baseline, parasympathetic. And this is when you're sleeping. This is when you're resting. This is when you're meditating. This is when your body is resting, digesting, healing, and repairing. So then we have activity. So let's say experience of, I was on my bike when I was little, and I was having a really great time until I fell. And so slowly my activity raised and raised and raised. And this could also be an example of a child not getting what they want. and they've asked for it. They're going along fine in the store, and all of a sudden, I want something. And now I really want this, and I'm getting a little anxious and frustrated. And now I'm getting really pissed off. And now I'm like having, the high pitched screaming attacks that we see and witness. And that's activity. It's a emotion, and emotions come in waves. And after this child, if this child does not get stopped by its mother and it gets a chance to cry it out and come back to baseline, it's completed and there's no trauma. And they don't remember the event, and there's no triggering, and there's no visceral reaction because they were able to complete it. But if mom or somebody made them stop and they had to stop in the middle of activity, that's where trauma comes in. This is where we get trauma. There's all these chemicals in your body that did not complete and come down to baseline. So there's epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, there's some of the same, cortisol. These chemicals are way more potent than any pharmaceutical. These things let us pull carbs off children if we have to. When they get trapped in the body, they create a lot of trouble. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit more, is the trauma response. But I wanted to get into the parasympathetic state because that's the rest and digest and relax. This is when you're like warm and fuzzy and you have resources. But there's two states, the dorsal vagal and the ventral vagal. And a lot of people don't know, this is Stephen Porges's, and I think some people, I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of the summit, but this is Stephen Porges's work. And when you come into this world, you either are on board, you're crying baby, upset, or you're dorsal vagal. And this is your body sending you the signal to go into death. And in order for your ventral vagal system, which gives you intensity and levels and the ability to soothe yourself or live in an environment resilient and with capacity, we have to have a loving caregiver that teaches us that. And that's when the ventral vagal nerve system gets myelated and comes on board. From birth to 17, your ventral vagal is learning how to behave, which is why we need a caregiver, and we need to be soothed, and we need to be comforted. And this is how we train and create a resilient nervous system, one that can have flexibility and can not go from 0 to high in 10 seconds. But if you go 0 to high, you've probably got trauma in there and you didn't learn a nice ventral vagal system. So does any of that make sense to anybody?
Yeah. And what I also want to point out, because I was the mom of a special needs child, is not only is the child traumatized, but the parent, and they might have something in their past that might be limiting them being able to provide. So it's just interesting, the layers that can happen. You know, we talk about it as one incident, but there's so many layers around that.
Which is
not
really, I won't have time to go into attachment stuff, but attachment theory and all the stuff that happens with attachment.
Yeah,
it's so true. And that's why having that loving caregiver that can offer you this, I mean, it's a gift nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us don't have that gift. So let's just take a moment.
Sharon.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
No, I have an observation. So I've been trained that if somebody is upset and crying, you need to hold space and let them go through it, because if you touch them, you anchor them, you physically anchor that emotion in their body, and you don't allow the body to go through the whole cycle and release. So the worst thing you can do is hug someone when they're really upset. Once they're done being upset and they can talk about it rationally, that's the time to say, I'm sorry you went through that, and then give them the hug. But we all want to stop that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that stopping the emotion is when you have trauma.
Right.
And like you said, it needs to complete.
Yeah.
If the caregiver is the person doing the holding, and that's when the body's being trained, but not just anybody can do this. Like you're saying, like, I can't just come and hold you and hold space and hug you. But if it's your family, it's your tribe, it's the people where you co-regulate with and your nervous system is relaxed and comfortable, then any of those people could hug and hold, and then they would experience the completion that much quicker in a safe environment of their the safety,
Right,
because
when you
that's
get to
really
the
what it's
point
about.
that you're feeling relaxed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
if you're
and
not, the opposite, you really have to be careful.
Yeah.
and it needs to be safety. We are not going to work with our nervous system if we're not safe, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today is the whole safety and all that. So thank you for that. So can we all just in a moment take a collective sigh and release our nervous system's little bits? So just breathe in nice and deep and just sigh it out. Ah. And so I'm going to invite you to really, and you can shut your audio off so I don't have to hear it, but really allow yourself to viscerally let this sigh out and let it speak to your entire being. So letting it in and letting it out, and just notice how your body responds to that sigh. That's one way our nervous system will naturally start to release the electrical activity that happens. So I am going to invite you to think about something that activates you for a moment. Um, a very stressful situation, a trauma that you've had. I like to think of a fire alarm. Loud noises set me off really quickly. Balloon popping, dentist drills. There's all kinds of things. But just take a moment and see if you can notice activation happening. And then I would like you to let go of that thought, that idea. And then notice again in your seat if you've changed where you've landed or how you're feeling. And then I would like to do a little exercise. And I'm going to invite you to take the heel of your hands right on top of the ears and clasp there. And then just press and release, press and release. And you might want to close your eyes so that you can really integrate this. You might want to rub in circles. You might want to reverse them. I'm going to invite you to really tune into what you're feeling, because sensation is how we notice our body. And then I'm going to invite you to let go of pressing and just let the hands stay there, and invite one of the hands to come onto your forehead and just connect and notice the energy of the hand. And let the other hand slip behind in the back to the occipital bone so that your head feels held. And maybe there's a sense of safety if you can feel that. Just checking in. Notice what's happening with your breath, where you're landed in your chair, the temperatures of your hands, the energy, and maybe invite the hand on the forehead onto the heart again. And notice with awareness and compassion. And everything's welcome, and you may not feel anything. And that is fine, because you're just checking in with your nervous system. And then let the other hand slide down to the belly again. And being curious if there's anything you notice that's changed, that you notice. Then I'm going to invite you to slowly open your eyes. Just notice what's happening. And I want to talk about activation, that electrical stuff that's happening. Maybe you keyed into some of it when I asked you to think about a stressor. And I like to check in and see, but there's usually the signs of the heart rate increases. And it comes in, quite dramatically if we're in a really threatening situation. The breath will often come up into the upper chest instead of being down low in the belly when we're in rest and digest, which we're going to do some of that too. There's a contraction of the upper body. So instead of your body being open, this contraction happens. It's a state of protection. It's almost like you put a shield up, and you're also preparing to fight or flight to the threat. And these can happen really subtly when you just small, subtle things. But I want us to be aware of what happens when we get activated and to what level. So the all over body becomes tense and getting ready to perform. We lose the prefrontal cortex. So we don't need a brain to fight off a threat. So the brain shuts down. The eyes dilate, so we really hone in on what it is that's threatening us. We could become very pale or flush. Hands could get very sweaty and forehead or cold. And we come really zoomed in and focused on what's just happening here. We kind of lose our peripheral. We also kind of lose our hearing because we're now listening for predatory sounds, which are low and deep. So we lose the voices of people and other parts of the surrounding. The chest gets tight and digestion completely stops. And in some instances, and I have some clients that recently had this, and reptiles do this all the time. When you're getting ready to fight or flight, you either get constipated because you don't need to digest food, or you have diarrhea because you got to evacuate. You got to be prepared. You do not need to digest food. You do not need to think. You do not need to have a baby. You do not do a lot of things when you're in the middle of a threat. So how does that look to be in the middle of a threat? So the breath comes in really strong and fast so that we can get oxygen. The heart rate picks up so we can either fight or run like heck. The tension is all about the protection and fighting. And it's almost like I call it like a shield we put up. So we're preparing to fight or flight because there's a threat. The same thing with that child that's going to school. They're now under threat and they're being asked to hear a teacher where their hearing is impaired. They're being asked to learn things when their brain is being shut off because they're under constant stress and threat, and their digestion isn't working. And that's because it gets shut down when we're under stress. So trauma and stress are similar. And the more activity we get into, the harder it is. And in trauma, if this happens regularly in your life, traumatic situations and stress, what happens is these don't complete, and neither do you come back to baseline. In fact, the baseline keeps rising. Each event, the baseline keeps rising. And each time you've gotten this threat and it didn't complete, and let's face it, if we live in society, we know we aren't allowed to yell, scream, cry, whatever it takes to get the anger, fear, whatever needs to release. So the baseline rises up, and pretty soon we're in a the state that we call normal is global high intensity activation. You're always living on a hypervigilant state. And it's really hard to get down into a parasympathetic state.
And the thing that I want to point out now is everything that's happened over the last 9 months. Such a huge percentage of the population has been in this chronic state of stress for the last 9 months. And it might be when we put our head on the pillow, we're not even resting and digesting.
We can't, because again, it's automatic. Unless we consciously and work with the body and release, It's not
Yeah, so
happening.
over the last 9 months, that baseline has been going up and up and up.
Yeah.
And
And that's why I put 19 videos for coping, for our body's sake, to help us. So it's wonderful points. This is why we need to be connected to our body, because when we get really traumatized, we disconnect. And that's why we never really want to say judge our body. We're just really letting it determine how we feel and noticing it and being aware of it. So
yeah, I just want to go back to the thing that you just said, which seems like a small detail, but is a really big detail, is that when we're experiencing trauma, we disconnect from our body, but our body is the anchor where we can process that trauma, I feel like, with a little bit more ease, because we're not really getting into the dialogue, some of the psychotherapy piece, which is also very effective. But yeah, working from that somatic, that body-based system can be really powerful. And
I
we've
agree.
done some research, even more efficient.
And that's some of the things I'm going to propose later on after we've played with our nervous system a little. And what I'm hoping is you'll take some of these ideas and tools and start to, just with curiosity, notice your body throughout the day, when you wake up, when things are happening. And then I'm going to offer you getting into parasympathetic. And we're going to do some exercises for this, coming down into baseline. Because if our nervous system is always up, we got to train it. We've got to use some of our resources, and we've got to train it and teach it how to relax. And once we learn to relax a little and bring ourselves down, we're going to be available in our body to healing. So some of the resources that people use and effectively is, you have your pets, you have family, possibly music, dancing, meditation, exercise, nature, sewing, knitting, coloring. I mean, you guys have, I'm sure you know what your resources are. Using your resources throughout the day, a creative hobby or reading, is really, really important. I like to tell my clients that, like, set your phone every hour in the hour and just take in some breaths, which we're going to do, and just check in with yourself. And then if you notice, wow, I'm really feeling active, give yourself the chance to just bring yourself down. And you're teaching your nervous system the stuff it may not have learned in the ventral vagal system, but you can teach it. So left nostril breathing. If you just breathe in through your left nostril, that automatically sends a signal to your physiology to relax. The same with a longer exhale than an inhale. You don't have to do anything but a longer exhale. It automatically is going to relax you. And then I love to do this exercise, and it's part of this SC thing. And so if you guys will do it with me, and you're giving yourself a hug. So you're putting one arm underneath the arm, and then you're holding yourself with the other. And then again, I invite you to close the eyes so that you can really go in and notice. And maybe imagine that you've got somebody hugging you that you really, really can receive. Because are you able to receive this energy, this hug? Can you self-love, or do you need someone else to be able to receive it? And also, maybe you're not able to receive it at all, and that's okay too if you're not able to. You just know that now. But just allowing yourself, whenever you hug somebody, 5 to 8 beats of your heart to really connect. And then I add a little sway and a rock. I mean, how many times do we rock our kids? We rock ourselves. If you just notice, you might just want to, like, love this and let your body be here and enjoy it. So some of those things are really great resources, and maybe you want to tell me about some of yours that you know really feel nice in your body.
Well, I love that you brought up the rocking, because that was something that Dr. Armesto talked about yesterday when he was talking about mindful self-compassion, was the rocking and the self-touch and the resourcing and orienting. And I'm glad you brought up the breath too, as someone who has received multiple emails from me. You know, at the bottom it says, just breathe, Shae. And
So
it's
we're going to
a
do
reminder,
that too.
yeah, because
Yeah.
breath is the quickest way to the nervous system.
Yep.
And if you can harness
And
that.
the breath informs the mind,
Yep.
and our mind can be our best friend and our worst enemy.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the rest, the parasympathetic state. This state is a playful state, and most children, if they're really coming in a good environment, you can see what this state is like. It is open and expansive. You are open to new experiences. You are curious to the world around you, where like in the activated state, everything gets focused in and shut down. So you're open and alive. Your body's vital because it's soft and alive and rested and healed. Because if you were able to have this state in a well-balanced, well-being body, you rest at night, during the day you're active, you come back down at night, you heal, you're well, you don't get sick, you're balanced. Your open and creative side comes out when you're in parasympathetic. You're engaged with people. You don't want to isolate. You have deep, full breaths that you can bring down into your belly, which we're going to do. You're also of access to your compassion, which sympathetic shuts off our compassion to ourselves and others. And the social engagement system comes on, and that is your eyes, your face, and a lot of other things that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But before that, I'm going to invite you again, if you want to shut your video off or not, um, let's just do a little exercise. If you don't mind, we're going to do some breathing and some SE work, and briefly just kind of checking in. And as you do that, you can close your eyes or not, maybe soften the face. And I'm going to invite you to notice your feet, and are they on the floor? And then I'm going to invite you to press your feet into wherever they're at and let them go. And just notice. And then I'm going to invite you to press and hold your feet. And at this moment in time, with awareness and your attention, notice the feet, the temperature, the pressure that you're feeling, the areas of contact that the feet have into wherever they're at. And with awareness, are you able to notice where your feet and skin and boundary ends, and where maybe the sock or shoe or floor starts? And let go. And notice what happens when that activation is gone. And notice how you feel. And then I'm going to invite you to bring your attention and awareness up to the sit bones and the seat where your legs are landed. And can just noticing where that is on the chair, how much weight is there, how much temperature is there, maybe how soft or hard it is there. If you could be aware of where that skin ends and where the clothing might start. Are the sit bones equally placed in your seat? And how much weight are you giving permission? And what about if we brought the attention up to where the shoulders are, right over the hips? Are you able to relax the body and let the bones support you? I'm going to invite you to witness your breath, drawing it in through the nostrils, past the hairs, hitting the walls of the nostrils, down the windpipe, past the belly button, and down into your sit bones and lower belly. And imagine you're blowing up a balloon with your breath. And letting it go, watching with attention and focus, letting it out, noticing how the body responds, feeling the warm air leave, letting it go. So just stay present with your breath for a moment, bringing it in and letting and allowing the lower belly to open And this is an allowing. And if you're struggling and efforting with this, I'm going to invite you to let it go and just let it be whatever it is. Longer, fuller, deeper, if that feels good to your belly and body. And if you might invite it up into the ribs and collars. And if you might fill up the whole torso with breath. And when you release it, let it be slow and effortless. Stay mindful with it and present with it. Feel it letting go. Notice how your body responds. And just let those breaths come in. And if you notice that brain of yours is coming on board without any judgment, just gently bring the awareness back into fully being present with the breath arriving, coming in, opening and filling. And maybe imagine that you are breathing in the scent of one of your favorite flowers. And so you want the inhale to continue. And then you can let the exhale slowly out because you want the experience to stay. Noticing and staying with the experience of the breath. Letting all your attention and awareness be there in the breath. Maybe allowing and giving permission to deepen and fill more with breath. Playing with how much can come in and out. And how that's feeling in your body. Noticing. And as you're present with your breath, have you noticed anything's changed? And has the breath allowed any changes, inform you of anything happening? Do you feel any more ease? Your brain letting go? More depth of heaviness and relaxation? And maybe not, because some people really struggle with this. And that's okay too, because you know where you're at. And I'm going to invite you to, with just a thought, just the beginning thought that I need to open my eyes and notice if your body's preparing you to do that. And as you open your eyes, I'm going to invite you to do it very slowly. Maybe lift them, just flutter them up and down. And as the light comes in, notice what activates in your body or not. And when you're ready, just slowly let your eyes come open and bring yourself back on board to a slight activity level. And hopefully you have had an opportunity to get into some parasympathetic work or not. Did everybody get a chance to feel a sense of relaxation?
Yes.
Yes. Great.
Yes.
Super. So that's great. And when we have our own resources that we can use, we have natural resets like sighs and yawns, where our body will enjoy safe touch. We can do self-touch or others touching. We can also do natural things that happen is your breath just automatically resets itself with a little, and also the body might have little jerks and shakes, and welcome those impulses. This is your body letting out the electricity. So welcome that. It's resetting. And I'd like to have an opportunity to talk about the social engagement system if we have time, but I want to know if you have any questions or want to go into that, or if I should proceed.
Yeah, we have 15 minutes left, so I think that would be really valuable to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the social engagement system comes on board through the vagus nerve, which innervates our entire nervous system, and that's our interoception capacity. But it's particularly focused around in the face, because this is how we learn if somebody's safe or not. So if I come up against somebody that has totally flat, blank eyes, I'm going to process that as a threat. That just happens. This is our natural safety stuff, taking in the cues. If it's a very flat face, I also going to interpret that as threat. I'm also going to interpret a very monotone voice as threat. So in the social engagement system, and why we do this with our animals and our children, and is the voice should have prosody and tone, calming, slowing, brings people into a sense of safety, reduces the threat, brings the vagus nerve on board. And if you're noticing, you can see people's activity, they're socially engaged, which means they have a really nice, resilient capacity in their nervous system, and they're probably in a state of parasympathetic or low activity. Kind eyes is the other one that if you soften and give your eyes, this is going to reduce threat. Slowing things down and curling the corners of your mouth up is going to let people know that you're safe. And it also affords ventral vagal capacity to heal, being totally present. You're not somewhere else at the same time. This is part of the social engagement system. How many times are we not present with a person? This offers healing, and it offers yourself healing and being in a play state. So in societies, the prosody of your voice means a lot and can really trigger threat. Because as a female, if there's that mouse hole thing, you get shrill and loud, and that lets everyone in the tribe know there's a threat. And if there's a male, it gets very deep and loud. And that also informs everyone that's a threat. Because our ears and our nose and our eyes go right past our prefrontal cortex and go right into the reptilian brain, which is where the autonomic nervous system is. That's all that interoceptive information coming in is your animal reptilian brain informing you of what's going on.
And that's the oldest part of the brain. And so that's why it most easily defaults to that, especially if you're, what am I supposed to do? Okay, let's default.
So I'm going to do something that could be totally embarrassing that I've never done before, but I just want to see how your body takes this in. So using the social engagement system, I'm going to sing this. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad. Every little cell is happy and well. I'm so glad. Every little cell is happy and well. Every little cell in my body is happy. Did you get happy? You can hum, that will change your life. You can sing. This is stuff that can change your nervous system and bring you back into parasympathetic state. And now you're also informing your brain, which will tell you if, all you have to do is think a bad thought. But if I'm telling my body it's well and happy, what's my body gonna do? Every little cell in my body is happy. It's gonna be happy and well. Okay, so
I'm so glad you brought up the humming. That is definitely a tool for me, because if my mind is going there, the humming is so effective for me. And there's a specific pranayama practice, Brahmari. Yeah, I love that. And the vibration too. You've got the sound, you've got the vibration, all these different soothing characteristics.
Yep. And the VU sound, which I didn't do, but when you're really getting stressed and really activated and you don't have too many people around, this is one of the biggest game changes is the VU sound. And it's a guttural sound. And once you've taken a breath in, you let it out slowly and deeply with a and you might want to practice that now or another time, but it is, I mean, I could just feel my whole physiology change. It just releases out so much stress.
And Ellie was talking about that yesterday when she was talking about essential oils, how each of the chakras have that seed sound, that bija sound. And yeah.
And I'm sorry, I haven't made, I took today off and
No, I just love the synchronicities and the different,
And so speaking of the chakras, something I had thought to bring up is, when we're traumatized or under a lot of stress, our root chakra, where we feel grounded, stable, safe, secure, that gets shattered and fractured. It's part of what we do to feel grounded. And so the breath work and bringing yourself grounded can so help with restoring you back, because once we start releasing trauma, especially if you've had trauma in your life and you know that it's holding you back, vitality comes back. You feel whole in your body. Your body's well because it has the capacity to come up and down, and it should. In order to be resilient, we need to be in activated states, and that teaches ourselves how to behave and how to grow and become resilient, just like we do weights to grow a muscle, and we get our immune system stronger by being in with viruses and bacteria and things. The system needs to be activated, but when it stays activated all the time, or it happened when you were really young and you never ever had the resilience to have a ventral vagal to give you what you need to come down into parasympathetic, it can be really scary. And
I just want to jump in real quick on the polyvagal theory, which I know you talked quite about. I know Stephen Porges' work is really deep and really technical. So I did put the link for him in Facebook, but if you're looking for another resource to learn a little bit about it, and I'll put this in Facebook too, the polyvagal theory in therapy. It's written by Dana, what's her first name? Deb Dana. And Stephen actually did the foreword for that book. It just breaks it down a little bit different.
Yes, I've listened to her.
Yeah. So I just thought I would mention that, and I'll put it in the Facebook group, because the polyvagal theory, and this was something that came up when I was working with Sue Ellen actually, is, we were talking about the law of attraction and desire and hope and, wanting to make these positive changes. But the polyvagal theory plays such a big role in that ability to hope and make change. And so yeah, and that was one of the best books that I read that helped me start to understand my polyvagal system and how it works.
So this is really life-changing stuff and changes the perspective. And one of the things I wanted to invite you to think about with some of the real basic stuff I went over is a lot of therapies talk about the stressor and how we're going to look at the stressor. Let's just say the stressor is your mother-in-law. And there's a confrontation or whatever. But most of therapies are going to say, well, what's this stressor? How are we going to change the way we think? And how are we going to change the way we behave with this stressor? And how are we going to learn coping tools, which I've given you a lot of coping tools. But if that's just helping you deal with the stressor, when we talk about somatic work, we're talking about the stressor we know is creating this overriding activation in our system. And yes, we can calm it, but if we don't let it heal and release it, we're just putting bandages on it. And so instead of just how we're going to look at that stressor and how we're going to behave with it and how we're going to think about it, we're going to release it and get that energy out of our system. because if you're doing other therapies and cognitive behavioral therapy, I agree, it's really good stuff. But we can still get really highly triggered if
Mhm.
we don't release what's really the root of a lot of this. We've just learned to put bandages on so we can cope and get through. And that's what I want to propose to you, that there's that.
And
Yeah.
we've also found in our research through Phoenix Rising that the somatic therapy can help prepare people for more of that cognitive based theory, where it is talking about it more, being triggered more. But if
Because
you
the prefrontal cortex comes back on.
yes,
We lose it when we're under stress and
yeah,
trauma.
yes,
And it can't come back on until we
yeah. But if you
find the space.
safely, and the example that I give people a lot is anxiety. And so, okay, so you're noticing anxiety. Where do you notice that in your body? Maybe it's the tingling in the back of your neck. So if you can now be a witness to the tingling in the back of your neck, name it as anxiety, but not allow it to be overwhelmed, then then I think that's where the transformation starts to happen, because you can start to make space for some of these bigger things. Yeah,
And
it's
that's
fascinating. Sorry, Sue
when
Ellen.
you do somatic work.
No, it's okay.
The somatic work is, we don't let all this trauma come out in one big boom.
Yeah.
And that's why we hold it all back in, because we're afraid of it.
Yeah.
So we slowly titrate it. And each time we let a little of it out, it brings the nervous system down, and it has an innate capacity to heal our body and bring our brain back on board and our health back on board.
Yeah.
But it's this, dance of,
Yeah.
slowly letting it out, let yourself shift and acclimate to it, and being ready for the next
Yeah.
release.
And I love that you pointed that
Mhm.
out, because
Yeah, I get really excited hearing you, and you have some really great simple tools. So I hope that, we get the word out that you're there for people, because it's not only trauma that we can remember.
Mhm.
So much of our thinking that causes these feelings is subconscious thought.
Yeah.
We're not aware of it. We're just aware that we're anxious. And anxiety is a pandemic
Yeah.
in our culture, for sure. And a lot of it isn't recognized. So you can go to a therapist and you can talk about things, and it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, because so much of it is subconscious.
Yeah.
So yeah, how can people work with you?
Oh, I have a website that Shae built for me, that you can contact me at,
Mhm.
and you can do it. I can do phone, virtual, and
Mhm.
in-person sessions. I have a few packages.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to say real quick, and I'm sorry if there's an internet lag, I don't mean to interrupt. One of the points that you made recently is there's this titration or pendulation, where you go in and you come out and you relax again, and you go in and you come out. And if you've been experiencing anxiety or trauma, if you've had this for 30 years, it's going to take more than one session. So I know you and I both, like, you have programs where people work with you for a year. I have programs month, 2 month, 4 months, because it takes time. If you've been dealing with this for a long time, don't expect one session. You're going to get a lot out of one session, but it's going to take time to resolve this. Yeah. And in speaking of the subconscious aspect, Sue Ellen, I know that you didn't mean to set me up, but Dr. Lenine Lewis is talking at 6:45 tonight. She actually does subconscious reprogramming. So if you're into what we're talking about here, you definitely want to be here at 6:45. I've worked with her as well. She's amazing. So I'm sorry, Sharon.
That's all right. And on my website too, Sue Ellen and anybody else, I didn't get a chance to go over the ACE and the adverse childhood experiences, and I think Shae brought it up. But it's only like 10 quick questions. There's a link on my website, and if you answer the questions, you get a good idea of where you lie in how your health and wellness is doing now in your adulthood because of your childhood experiences. It's a really fun quiz.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining me and being a part of this summit. And thank you, Shae, for inviting me. I appreciate it. And yeah, reach out to me anytime. I have free discovery sessions, and I'm always around helping people healing. It's been my life's purpose. And so, yeah, thank
Well,
you
I want
all.
to say thank you to you. I know that we could just have a whole seminar where we could spend 5 days just talking about this. And I know you and I resonate in that way so well. So I just want to honor you and your gift and the work that you're doing in the world. And I can just tell the passion that comes out when you're talking about this. You just glow. And so
And
thank
I
you
love
for
it.
being that light. It's wonderful.
And if you want to share, we're past the time. I was going to say there's a minute long, and it's just a slideshow to have you witness some beautiful things and notice how your body responds. And if you're up for that, we could do that or not.
I think it would be lovely. We have 15 minutes and Sue Ellen is presenting next. So she's already here.
Okay. So,
Um,
so shall I try and share this?
Yeah, I would, because we have about a 15-minute break. And so, yeah, go ahead and use that time.
Okay,
I
so
will
I'm
make
disabled.
Yep, I will make you a co-host.
Okay. And we'll see. My technological genius is not there, as you can see,
I'm here for you.
which is why there was no.
So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a green button. Yeah, there you go. Wonderful. And then close that. Yep, so up in the left-hand corner.
Am I going to shut myself off if I close it?
Nope. So
Sure.
if you go over to the left, yep, close. Yeah, just
Here
minimize.
we go. How can I bring this over?
It should come
And
up.
I'm just going to play it.
There you go.
Yep. There.
That was beautiful.
Yep.
And I did put a link to your website in the Facebook group. So,
And in my YouTube channel, or should I do that?
well, there is a link on the website. So, yep, right in the
So
bottom.
just to let you guys know, or anybody, Sue Ellen, that I have lots of meditations and simple coping strategies free on YouTube to help people. Let's bring society back into a healing state of parasympathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Always
you so
a pleasure
much.
to share community with you.